Welcome everyone to Living Well Today. I'm Angela Moonen, and today I've got with me a really beautiful soul. I'm so excited that she agreed to join us and share a little glimpse into her world, and that is Rebecca Shiroff. Rebecca, welcome.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. I'm doing well. I'm doing well today. So we're going to go on this journey with you, and I want to share a little bit about Rebecca with you. And I'm not going to steal her thunder. I'll let her dive into some of these things. But let me tell you a little bit about this dynamic entrepreneur. Rebecca is a first generation American born Cuban whose family escaped communism in the 1960s. And we're going to talk about that incredible courage and journey that her parents paved before her. We're going to talk about her PR firm, being an entrepreneur. She sits on many boards, and philanthropy is a vital part of her North Star. And she also has got some exciting projects coming. She most importantly states that of all the things that she has impact in the political circles that she travels in and is engaged in advocating for, the philanthropic circles, the business circles, that being a mom is one of her, if not the greatest treasure that she has. So, and Rebecca and I share, and as maybe some of you on with us today share, that we are single moms, co-parenting with really terrific parent ex-spouses. We're going to talk about that interesting adventure as well, and the chapter that you're entering into now in your life, Rebecca. So with that, talk a little bit about where life is at for you right now today, and then we're gonna go back and see where it all began.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I was so honored that you asked me to be on. It's always wonderful to see your beautiful face also. You're so
Thank you.
positive about everything, and I absolutely love it because that's how I try and live my life too. So, so as you said, I'm a first generation American. My parents escaped communist Cuba in the 1960s. And honestly, I mean, my father's my hero. He was a physician in his native country. And once the communists took over, they took all of their properties, their business. He came to this country with my mom and my brother in tow, and they had absolutely nothing. Back then, it wasn't like it is now where you can revalidate your professional credentials. He had to start all over again. So he worked in factories so that he can go to school, slept about 4 hours a night, had a lot of beans and rice because that's what they could afford back then because they had nothing. And what amazes me most about him is that he and my mom, who has since passed away, unfortunately, they did it on their own. They took no help from the government. They were very, very proud, and they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. It wasn't even their country. My father knew the language, but it's always different when you're in a new country where it's not your language, it's not your culture. But they did it all on their own. And to me, I think that's where I got my work ethic, because after enduring what they endured, there's no excuse. You know what I
Well, when
mean?
you see that and you say, well, also from an inspirational standpoint, if they can do that, imagine what I
Absolutely.
can do with my resources. Right,
Absolutely. And
right.
honestly, I always say one of the best gifts they gave me, and this is funny because people are always surprised when I tell them that I'm Cuban. I always say American born, made of Cuban parts, because really that's what I am. So, but Spanish is actually my first language. I didn't learn English till I was about 7 years old, because really one of the greatest gifts they gave me is they never let me speak English at home. They would only allow me to speak Spanish, because they figured, we lived in Miami when, at the time I was of that age. And they said, you'll learn it at school. You'll be talking it every day. You need to learn Spanish. And it was the greatest gift that they gave me, because it's my mother tongue. I'm completely fluent. And somebody actually asked me not too long ago, since it's your native tongue, what do you dream in? English and Spanish? And I never thought about it. I dream in Spanish. So
Do
everybody in
you?
my
That's
community
a
speaks Spanish.
fascinating question.
Yeah.
I've never thought about that either.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I do have some that are, mainly in English, but I mean, there's been times where I have a dream with friends or whatever, and they're speaking Spanish. And I'm like, God, you really should learn because you looked great doing it, so,
How
but
old were your parents when they needed to leave and they came to America? How just to give us some framework, were they in
20s,
their 20s?
20s, yeah, 20s. They were very young. And I think something that I'm seeing a lot in this generation nowadays, unfortunately, is there seems to be a lack of work ethic, and I think it comes from parents of maybe my generation, that saw the struggles that our parents went through, and we're trying to make life easier for our kids, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I've seen situations where it actually was an issue because things
Right.
were handed over too easily. You need to work for something to have work ethic,
Yes.
and thankfully I have two amazing, well, I call them children, but they're adults,
I have
um,
some photos. Can I share as you're sharing some
sure.
of your stories?
Yes,
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 yes.
yes. Okay, great.
So,
Wonderful. Keep talking.
yep. So I have a daughter who is 21. Her name is Emily, and she is actually, she's quite an impressive young woman. Um, she graduated high school at 16, graduated from Vanderbilt when she was 19, and then received her master's when she was 20 from Newhouse, the School of Journalism. And now at the age of 21, she's a journalist and producer for WMBF, which is an NBC affiliate in Myrtle Beach in South Carolina. So it's really exciting. And then I have my son, who is also an amazing young man, the most charming person you could possibly meet. He can charm the pants off of anyone.
He's going
And
to go far in this life.
yes,
Right?
and he's got a beautiful heart. They both are very kind souls. And he's got a heart of gold. He's always the one that's friends with everyone. They always stand up for the underdog. And I have to say I am incredibly proud of both of them. And I've done some pretty cool things in my life, but the biggest accomplishment I have ever had in my life is creating those two amazing human beings. And I'm very thankful that I had the opportunity to raise them with a wonderful man, which is my ex-husband, David. And thankfully, we're, I think, the exception to the norm, which is kind of sad. I wish more people would be able to have this type of relationship, but he's still one of my best friends. And, we ask questions of each other about everything. I mean, like, I've gotten dating advice from him. I've become like friendly, at least, over social
Right.
media with his girlfriend, which is a wonderful woman. I can't wait to meet her. So it's very rare, and it's a shame because it really does make life a lot easier. And, even though we were already divorced at the time, he was one of my biggest cheerleaders when it came to the last half of my run for state Senate. There was
So
no
yes. So we're gonna walk through that crazy ride of your efforts and enterprise,
yeah.
and what you learned through that. But let's pause for a second. I want to talk a little bit more about that unique dynamic. How is it that you foster, and that I think that goes for any of us, where you think about living well today is a great deal to do with almost everything to do with the kind of energy that you put out, the kind of energy you invest in yourself, and then the kind of energy you put out into the world, into your community, your family. Talk a little bit about how you've cultivated a peaceful energy with what could otherwise be with David. uh, as you pointed out, that's not the norm. To have peace and ease around something that's ending, right? After having so many friends and memories and things that you've created together. Talk a little bit about that dynamic and what you think has allowed the two of you uniquely to create that for yourself.
Sure. Well, I think It begins with the individual. And like I said, he's a wonderful man. We had a great marriage for many, many years. We were married for 24 years, but sometimes people grow apart, they go in separate directions, and it has nothing to do with, the love you have for this person. I mean, it's the father of my children. So he will, anything he ever needs, I will be there, and vice versa. But I think the most important thing is that we both realized that our lives were heading in separate directions. And, you want the other person to be happy. You obviously want to be happy yourself. And I think that that's when you start realizing that there's an issue. But I wanted him to be happy, and he wanted me to be happy, and whatever we could do to support each other, we did. And I think that at the core of that was our kids. Nothing was more important than that.
And keeping as much equilibrium for
100%.
them as possible.
There was no, a lot of times, unfortunately, I see couples that have this horrible divorce, and a lot of it, the root of it has to do financially. And the way I look at it, that comes and goes. One day you could be up, one day you can be down. The most important thing is the human being and the relationship that you have with them. And that was never an issue for us. We agreed on everything, because we wanted to set an example for our kids, because it was difficult when we first told them that we were planning on getting a divorce. And I think it was because the majority of the experiences that they had was watching their friends' parents have these dogfight divorces that just turned so ugly, and it was so painful for the kids. And I think that is what they envisioned. And I think as time passed and they saw that that wasn't the case, he comes for Thanksgiving, stays here at the house, we still say, okay, love you, because we're like best friends. I think that definitely made it a lot easier, but I think it all boils down to focusing on what's really important, which is it's not money. I mean, let's face it, it's the happiness of the other person and the example that you set for your kids.
And I think that's a testament. You pointed something out. It really has to do, it's like that opening slide that I play each week, is that when there's harmony in the home. And so when there's harmony within the individual, then there is a more harmonious home. Whether you ultimately decide to have two separate homes or not, I think you're right. It absolutely has to begin with the individual and where that person is at, and certainly a mutual trust and regard and respect for the others and for the family as a whole. It's inspirational to see that. I think we'll talk a little bit about, because I know that one of the things on the horizon for you is exactly taking some of those lessons and what you're discovering on the other side of that now. So, all right, walk us through, how was it your parents' journey? I'm sure it was the fabric of lots of things woven together, but what was the inspiration for you to get yourself so engaged and involved in politics, and to dream and to stretch for that? And give us some background and context, because many of the folks here may not know thing one about it. So
right. So it's funny because I happened to fall into politics accidentally. It was totally unexpected. I've always been a political junkie, always, my whole life. And one thing I always do is I always look at both sides, and then I form an educated opinion, let's say. And because I think that's very important. And I think that there's a huge issue nowadays. It's so polarized, and there's too much of one side fighting against the other rather than trying to come together. And that was something that I tried to do in my campaign, because that's really how I am.
So what was the role that you campaigned for?
So I ran for New York State Senate, and it was a very interesting, as you know, it was a very interesting journey. I got into it. I was actually approached to do this, and sometimes other people see something in you that you don't see in yourself. Especially, I was in the middle of going through a divorce. And I think especially for women, if, if we're moms and, we've been stay-at-home moms and, while being business owners, that juggling of everything, there's a time where I think you kind of lose who you are, the core of who you are. And I think that happened to me a little bit. And greatest thing I ever did was raise my kids, and I would never change that. But I do think that as far as an individual, you kind of lose who you are, because as women, we tend to think of everybody else first. We think of the kids first, and then we think
We're
of
defined by those around us more
exactly.
so than ever
So
looking through the lens of ourselves. Right.
so we're kind of lower on the totem pole. So once you're going through that, sometimes it takes people to see something in you that you don't see in yourself, or that you forgot you even had. And I think that's what happened. I almost forgot how passionate I was about certain issues. And I couldn't remember how aggressive I can be. And I don't mean aggressive in a bad way. Aggressive in, I'm going to go after what I want, regardless of how difficult.
Moxie, right?
And I've been told I have that.
You-
So, I don't know if you watch the show Yellowstone or not, but a lot of people are like, your attitude kind of reminds me of Beth Dutton. I'm like, well, that could be a good thing or a bad thing, but whatever.
Well, we all have two sides of the coin, right?
Exactly,
It can go either way.
Exactly. So I am, again, there were people who were very instrumental in me making that decision, because they saw something in me that I didn't see, or that I had forgotten that I had. And once I was in it, it's like I found my passion again.
It was like this wellspring. Did you find it kind of rippling
100%.
out into lots of areas of your life? I would guess.
I did 100%. And, I guess the more difficult part was it's kind of, I used to get attention, before, because of being the spokesperson for Metro Mattress, our company,
Your company
and commercials and all that. But now this is different. And I guess what took getting used to is like people coming up to me if I was like out with friends or whatever, and talking about that. And I'm not one that craves the spotlight. I really never have. And go figure, I ended up in politics, but whatever. But that was the thing that got it took the most getting used to, because I wasn't used to that type of attention. And seeing myself on the news, and and not just here. I mean, it was covered in like the New York Post, it was all over, which was shocking to me, because it was a very closely watched race. So I only had 5 months to campaign, because I came into the race very late. I was outspent 8-1, which is a huge number to go up against. And we had to do a hand count. On election night, I was up, I believe 500, something like that. I can't remember the exact number, but they had to do a hand count, because if it comes in New York State, if it comes within 0.5%, you have to do a mandatory hand count of all the ballots. Mine, I believe, was like 0.035 or some insane number like that. It took 41 days to get the final results.
I remember it being so. What was that? All right, now take us behind the curtain. What was it like for 41 days? I mean, what spectrum of emotions did you go through?
It was a little.
I'm sure you were exhausted.
No, not at all. No, not exhausted at all. No, not at all. No, yeah, it was physically, during the campaign, it was physically exhausting, because you're on, almost 24/7. People go home from work and they can turn it off. I couldn't, because you're always, on the lookout, and you're always trying to, make sure that there are facts being presented. The one thing I am most proud of, I will say, in my campaign is that it was a clean campaign. I never went low. I never went dirty. And actually, Syracuse.com did an op-ed about the fact that, I was very gracious in my concession, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. In the end, when all was said and done, I lost by 10 votes.
10 votes. I thought it was 15. 10
No,
votes.
10, like 2 households, so 10 votes. So I am the poster person for every vote counts right here, poster person. Okay.
Well, now give us some context though. So how many votes approximately, you have to give us an executive vote. How many votes were cast? Because 10 votes doesn't sound like that, but if it's in a massive campaign like that, 10 votes is just.
It was over 100. I believe it was over 150,000. So, yeah, 10 votes. And I got to say that the Board of Elections worked tirelessly because that is a big job to hand count. And there were a tremendous amount of volunteers that helped with that. It was grueling. It was stressful. I didn't have a very big team because I didn't have time to put a team really together because again, it's 5 months, usually you have at least a year and a half. I only had 5 months. So even though I, did not come out on top, it was 10 votes. I do hold the record though for closest Senate race in New York State history. So there's that.
Oh, there's that.
I always look for the silver lining and everything,
And you're still you're on many boards, you're completely engaged and involved, and you're still in the waters, in the political waters. But what do you think it taught you about yourself, aside from your passion and your fuel? What other aspects of you were revealed, or just about the world in general as life lessons?
Well, being a Cuban woman, we are very passionate. So I had to learn how to have a tremendous amount of patience, which was not always a, characteristic of mine. But I will tell you, there is no better way to learn that than being in politics. You have to have a tremendous amount of patience, tolerance. You have to have a very thick skin, which I never realized. I mean, I've never been one to care, what anybody thinks or anything. Cause, like I always say, we come into this world alone, we leave this world alone, everything in between. It's never really mattered to me what anybody thinks of me, cause as long as I can live with myself and I make my kids happy and my father happy, that's all I care about. As long as they're proud of me, nothing else matters. But you have to have a very thick skin because there were some pretty negative things said about me, many of which were false, unfortunately. And, and
perpetrated by the other campaign or just in general?
Yeah. By them, just people in general. I mean, I had people come up to me sometimes in the grocery store and just, say some very, unkind things, and they had no idea anything about me. They didn't know me. They didn't know what I stood for. They didn't know the work that I do in the community. They really didn't know anything, just what they read.
Just slinging.
And if it's on the internet, it must be true. So,
Right.
you know what I mean? So, so very thick skin. And I didn't realize just how thick my skin was until I went through that. And that definitely has helped me. And it's kind of a lesson also that I've helped a few of my friends with, that it doesn't really matter as long as you are happy with yourself and you can live with yourself and you can put your head on the pillow at night knowing that you did the.
Oh. Rebecca, are you with us? All right, well, we're going to keep talking until she renders. It looks like she's having a little bit of a challenge.
About you, who said you're going to be thinking about what you did in this world to make it a little bit better. And, there's some initiatives that I'm involved in that, even if I helped save one life, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful. And I applaud the courage. No doubt that again is something else that has been cultivated through the generations, because of who you are and who your family is. Let's take a moment to talk about. I want to talk about your mom and your dad, and where you spend a good deal of time with your dad now, and he's a very big part of your life. What are the attributes of your dad in particular, that you think are worthy of emulating, that you would look at your dad and just say, I know I can fill in the blank because of what he pioneered before me.
Yeah. So I was very lucky to have, two wonderful parents. And, like I said, my mother passed away in 2015. Unfortunately she was actually quite young. She was 69. And she had dementia and was just, as you could see in the picture, she was just a stunning woman.
Stunning. Absolutely
Yeah.
stunning.
Beautiful,
Movie
beautiful.
star. Movie star
Yeah,
stunning.
she's
Yes.
just beautiful. These sky blue eyes. I mean, just a beautiful, beautiful woman. Had a very kind heart. She did deal with depression though, and that was challenging at times. And we can get into that later. But my father was always my rock, and honestly, to this day, he still is. I am not like a person that gets emotional because you know but whenever I talk about him, I do a little bit because he's always been my rock. And seeing everything that he endured in his life and how far he was able to come after going through all of that and still maintaining the positive attitude that he has. I can honestly say he is 85 years old. I have never heard my dad speak ill of anyone, of anyone.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
Tremendous amount of patience, because let me tell you something, to put up in a household with me and my mom, who were both very fiery Cuban women, and my brother, who's also a great guy, but he's kind of like, whatever, everything will work out, and I'm very, very passionate, and just I can be a little fiery. There is a little bit of Ricky Ricardo in me that I try and down a notch at
The
times.
quintessential, right?
Right,
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 right.
right.
But yeah,
Well, you can see here, even in this photograph in the center, that he was a rock for your mom
yeah, oh,
as well.
100%. And he was amazing towards the end. I mean, he was her caretaker, and he really didn't want any help until finally we pushed him and said, you have to, because if anything happens to you, then what? What then? And I was there, which I thought was it was a very special moment. I was there when my mom passed, and he was incredible. He was there right until the very end, and even after she was gone, he didn't leave her side until they came to take her away. And it was truly beautiful. But I found it to be very special that she was there when I came into this world, and I was there when she left. You know,
Hmm.
that was,
How many years were your mom and dad married?
oh my gosh, I believe 50 almost, or
Yeah.
maybe over 50. I'm not exactly sure, but they were very young. I believe my mom was 20 when she married my dad. And they had a wonderful relationship. There were ups and downs like in every relationship.
Like life on planet Earth, right?
They
Yeah.
stuck it out. They stuck it out. They loved each other. And I think that it's always very easy to be there for the good times. I think it speaks volumes how you handle the bad times. And I can tell you, times were really bad the last about 10 years of my mom's life, because she was very ill. And I mean, she withered away to nothing. Dementia is a horrific disease, early onset Alzheimer's. It's horrible, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And he was a rock star. I mean, did not leave her side. He was always her constant. And even when she forgot who I was, which was really one of the most difficult moments of
Oh,
my
that
life,
had to be, Rebecca, that had
when
to
she
be.
didn't recognize me, that like was like a knife in your heart. She never forgot who he was, which,
Really?
yeah, she never forgot who he was. And that goes to show you the bond that they shared.
Mm.
And to this day, like I've told my dad, I'm like, Dad, what, like there's this lady, that a friend of mine wants you to meet, and he's a very cultured man. He's very well read. He's a retired psychologist, very well read. I've never seen anyone that has read more books about everything in this world than my father.
Could
He
have a conversation about just about
About
everything.
anything. Like he
Yeah,
knows a
yeah.
lot about a lot, which is, there's a lot of people that know like a lot about a little bit. He knows a lot about so many different things. And he's one of those people that, even if you're a philosopher, there's something you can learn from him. Every time somebody meets him, they talk about how fascinating he is, and how they always learn something from him. whenever they speak to him. So
And your kids must, I mean, they must have a really endearing relationship with him as an
yeah,
extension of your relationship with him.
yeah, they do, and he's great. He's, he's got a phenomenal sense of humor. He's one of my favorite stories is a few years back. You know, Cubans love to party, right? We love to have a good time. That's what,
Hey,
yeah, I remember when I was little that like my
and
parents,
Cubans, I've
yeah,
got to see
yeah.
Cubans take party to a whole new level.
Yes, I remember being like a little kid and them having like, oh, we're just gonna have a few people over. It ended up being like 20 people. And then like, the party went through the night and then they watched the sunrise while playing guitar. Like, I mean, it was, but I'll never forget a few years back. It was right when my dad moved here. I took him to a party at a friend's house and it was really cool because they were all, like Hispanic and, we get there. He's like, okay, I don't want to stay too late, 1 a.m. He's sitting there and like they're all singing and he's saying all these jokes. So here I was, right? And at about 1:30, I'm like, Poppy, can we please go? I'm exhausted. Like my 82-year-old dad at the time. And I'm asking him, can we please go? I'm really tired. So he's like that kind of dynamic person where he's bright, he's funny, he's serious. He's got his patience. He's got the patience of Job. I think I've seen him upset maybe 5 times in my life. And I just celebrated the 10th anniversary of my 40th. So, that age.
I'd like that. I gotta
So,
remember that.
yeah. So I'm 50, I finally am owning the number, I don't feel it. I feel like I'm 30. So, but I am 50. And I can honestly say maybe 5 times in my life, I've seen him that upset and which is amazing, it's amazing. So, and he's still like that. He's very down to earth and just cool and laid back and everything will work out. And when I'm really stressed out about something, relax, which isn't always a good thing to say to a woman.
I know it's what is that word tends to actually kind of.
Oh, I lost your sound.
Oh.
I lost your sound.
Okay. Sorry. Am I back? I tend to.
Nope.
That word still no.
Can't hear it.
All right.
I didn't.
You try.
There we go. Could you try again?
Oh my goodness. Sorry.
There we go. All right.
Okay, there we go. All right, got you back. Sorry.
Okay. I was just going to say that word tends to trigger something completely different in me. When someone says relax, well,
no,
it doesn't
that's
work.
that's not usually, if I cross paths with anyone out there at any point where, we go out to dinner or something, I don't ever say that. That's the worst thing that you could say is relax, because that just, no, that does not work. But when my dad says it, it's okay. I kind of,
and
he's managed
to master it, which I think is, that's probably, when we each talk about things that we want to continue to evolve within ourselves, patience. Patience is one of them for mine. And a good friend of mine recently said, well, it tends to be people who have a lot of thoughts and are very active and a lot going on and very creative. Sometimes patience doesn't always blend that well with lots of thoughts and so, but that's also, mindfulness and drawing it in and slowing it down. And it's so important to find that balance. So, so for you, Rebecca, how do you find that balance? Because clearly, you're a quick study, you're assertive, you are very engaged and always advocating. How do you, we talk about living well today. How do you cultivate that balance and harmony for yourself?
My alone time is very important to me. And that's something that I always, in my marriage tried to do was, there was your life, my life, and our life. And my time is very important to me. And that's something that, there's people that haven't been able to understand that and maybe take it as like an insult. Well, what do you mean you don't want to be with? No, I value my alone time because I need to be within my own head and I need to figure out my own thoughts and I need to figure out what I want to do and what makes me happy. Because like I said before, as women, we tend to put everybody else's happiness before our own. And when you find yourself a divorced woman and with grown children, you actually have time to focus on yourself. So that was something that took some getting used to, because I really wasn't used to doing that. And, you discover a lot about yourself, and you discover a lot about the things that you like, that you don't like, the things that you will put up with, the things that you won't put up with. At times I've, been told that I'm intimidating, which I don't think I
I
am.
saw a post on your Facebook that
Yeah,
said that.
I
You said,
I don't.
if me being clear about my boundaries and me knowing what I want and being focused on, that's intimidating, I guess I'll take it.
Yeah, and I don't, you know what? I don't apologize for that, because you need to be somebody who is comfortable with a person, especially a woman who's like that. That's not something I'm ever gonna change. That's because I've rediscovered that. After being divorced, that strength within, and that ability to say, what, this is what I stand for, this is what I'm about, and I'm not apologizing for it. And take it or leave it, it doesn't matter. And I have to say, throughout this journey, there have been people that I've cut out of my life, what I call emotional vampires, the people that bring a negative aura
Mm.
about you, and around you.
You
And
can feel it when you're in their presence. And you can
100,
actually feel you being drained of something, of
100%.
being drained
Yes.
of that energy. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I've gone through like my Facebook, Instagram, I've purged, because I really just, at this point in my life, I want to be surrounded by people who are positive. And, it's one thing if you're going through something, if you have a sick child, that's a completely different situation. But I'm talking about the people that are just always negative. They don't. I always try and see the good in every situation, even when something horrible happens. I believe there's a reason for it. Everything happens for a reason, and I live by that. Because there have been things that I've been through that are, have been pretty horrible. But there's always been either something good that comes out of it, or there's been a reason for it, or everything happens how it's supposed to. In
Yes.
cases.
And it steps you to the next and the next and the next.
100%,
Yeah, all part of
100%.
those
And a
same.
lot of times when a door closes, a window opens, and you look back and you say, okay, that's why that didn't happen, because it was supposed to lead me to this.
Right.
And that's what I want to be surrounded by. I want to enjoy life. I want to travel, and I have the freedom to do that now. And I want to be happy. And I think that in the end, that's all that we want. But I think that the people you surround yourself with play a huge role in that.
Huge role, huge role. And also because, I'm not sure how you feel about this as well, but I know throughout my life, I've always sought rooms that were bigger than me, people
Yes.
that were bigger than me in one respect or another. I know I always have my own unique perspective to offer a conversation or a circumstance or a project, but I know that by being uncomfortable in the sense that it's the unknown, or I
Right.
want to, it causes me to sheer myself up, to let myself expand. Because if you're around other expanded individuals or expanding individuals, you can't help but rise up to
Yeah.
that, and
Yeah.
to learn something and to lean in. And it's okay to feel intimidated for a moment.
Right.
That's kind of human,
Right.
right? But to say, all right, now I trust. I
Mhm.
trust myself. I trust my capabilities. I trust my God. I trust my friends that I've chosen to surround myself with. And it's time to step up. It's time to take, and I think that's, it's one of the challenges that we face as moms,
Mhm.
because we love our kids so much,
Yes.
um, to let them feel uncomfortable,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
right? To let
And
them feel that discomfort,
right.
because in those times of uncertainty and discomfort, it's the only time resilience is cultivated.
Yeah,
It's the only
and
way it
there's
can be.
valuable lessons to be learned. And something I have always believed, and it's, I don't remember where I saw it, but if you're the most intelligent person in the room, get out. And
Yeah, go somewhere else. That's
yes, and
right.
I'm a huge believer in that, because I think that everyone who I've ever crossed paths with, there's something I can learn from them. And I think that we're continuously learning and evolving. And that's something I've tried to teach my kids is you can always learn something from everyone that you encounter in life. And you always treat everybody the same. I say hello to the janitor just as warmly as I would to the CEO of a company. We're all the same. In the end, we're all the same, and that's something I've always tried to teach them is you treat everybody equally. And there's always something that you can learn from everybody that crosses your path in life. And if you don't believe that, it's not good.
Yeah. And it's the same tenets that you can see as evident in the type of campaign you ran, the kind of relationship you have with your ex-husband, et cetera, that equanimity and equal respect, equal regard. Now that as to your point, that doesn't mean that you don't have solid boundaries
Of
of
course.
who, right? And it also means that you are expectant
Mhm.
of that same regard
Yeah.
and treatment. And you learn very quickly, as you pointed out, you learn very quickly who's not capable of offering that to you. And I have found through life and through work, fewer and fewer of those type of people even come into my circle to begin with, because of being very clear of
Right.
who I am and what I'm putting out and what I'm contributing. I tend to attract people into my life that are of similar
Right.
interests and similar energies.
Right. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because there's an initiative that's incredibly important to you, that deals with emotional intelligence and deals with who you surround yourself with and the stories that you're telling yourself, and that is your mental health awareness and the initiatives that you have in place for that are starting soon, actually in November. You want to share a little bit about that story? It's fascinating.
Yes. So, like I said, my mom suffered with depression. I think all of us at some point have. And,
Mhm.
um, you know, one of the bravest people that I have in my life, quite frankly, is my daughter, because she's a survivor of a suicide. And um, for that moment where she,
Rebecca, we're having a little bit of a streaming issue. So if you want to give it just a second, because I want to take some time for everyone to be able to really hear this, because it's important. Um, let's see. You try talking again and let's see if it works okay for you.
okay, how's that? Does that work?
Yes, we don't have your video fully back. I'm not sure why, but there you go. Okay.
Okay. Out there?
Yeah, there we go. I'm
Okay.
not sure.
All right. Hmm.
Yeah,
Back
I
or
know.
no?
There you are. It's very it seems to be okay on my end, but yours is
Yeah.
freezing.
Yeah. Our internet, unfortunately, our Wi-Fi is not great at all.
Okay, there you
Yeah.
go, love. There you go.
Okay. All right. Am I back? I'm just trying to.
Yes.
All right. Back. All right. Perfect. So, yeah. So as I was saying, I don't know how much of that you got, but, my daughter, and the only reason I'm sharing this is because she shared her story herself, because that is her story to tell. And I never shared it until she did. She, she's a suicide attempt survivor. And, she, to remember that night and see where she is now, the amount of bravery and resilience it took was amazing. And she actually went so far as to write an op-ed for Syracuse.com, where she talked about her experience and the importance of having mental health resources in schools for our kids, because there are so many that are struggling with it, that because of the stigma that is still associated with mental health, don't talk about it. And I have actually said, well, first of all, her op-ed was shared over 3,000 times on Syracuse.com. She had kids from everywhere reaching out to her on social media, thanking her for talking about her experience, because it opened the door for them to be able to do that. And I've had parents come up to me and actually tell me that she helped save their children's lives. There was one in particular who I'll never forget. This woman who saw me at at a booth that I was volunteering at for one of the runs, and she asked me if I was Emily Shiroff's mom. First, she asked me Rebecca Shiroff. I thought it was politically related, and then I said, "Oh yeah," she said, "Are you Emily's mom?" She wrote a piece. I said, "Oh yeah, yeah," and she told me literally she saved her son's life. Her son was writing his goodbye letter on his computer when a friend of his sent him a text with a link to my daughter's op-ed, and it clicked something, and he went into their room and tell been writing my letter. I can't do this anymore. I need help, but I don't want you to be mad. I gotta tell you that unbelievable to hear. And we're both hugging and sobbing. And I called my daughter and I told her, remember how I told you wrote we're gonna save? I know for a fact today, I know for a fact that you saved at least one. And God only knows how many more there were out there. And it was because of that bravery of sharing the story. And that's what we do, is to remove that stigma associated with mental health. It's no different than being, diabetic, or, it's something that unfortunately, you're born with. And I'm talking about organic depression, not situational depression. And there's a lot of people struggling that won't talk about it. And we need to change that, because the more we speak about it, the more we realize how many people actually have an issue with it, and the more we can do to help it. So I do have, you had mentioned an initiative that's going to be announced in November or December. And it's to help fund training for teachers to be able to train them on how to distinguish between kids that have, mental health struggles and those that don't, because a lot of times they'll rely on school counselors to do that. But you got to realize school counselors, their main focus is academics, and it's a lot of burden to put on one person when
On
they're
one
dealing.
person, and there's not
Yes.
the resources. You're talking about one
Correct.
or two, how many counselors in a particular school, particularly in rural areas, right? That's
Right.
just
And
not.
it takes a specific amount of a very specialized training. I mean, it's like when you go to a doctor, you wouldn't go to your cardiologist for an earache, same field, different specialties. So this initiative is going to help fund training for teachers so that they can realize, okay, that kid there, yeah, they're always smiling, but something's not right. Because I got to tell you, a smile can, and I always say this, a smile can hide a tremendous amount of pain. And you have to have a very keen eye to realize, okay, is that a genuine smile, or is that a smile that I'm seeing because this kid is trying to hide something? So it's going to help with that. It's also going to help families who have had children that have committed suicide, because there are not a lot of resources out there for those people. And thankfully, I had a happy ending with mine, but far too many don't. And I realize that there is a need for that. And there's a need for providers. And hopefully this initiative will also help by trying to recruit people into the field through scholarships or something to that nature. As long as they commit to, once you do this, you need to stay within our community for a certain number of years to help us, and then you can move on. But we will help you do this, but you, in return, you need to commit to
devote a certain amount of. And what I'll have to do, Rebecca, is circle back with people, and we'll post some links and different things if people want to somehow be involved or learn more about it. When you have something official, it's just around the corner, but when you have something official, we'll be sure to share that.
I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited. And the biggest moment was when my son told me he was so proud of me. I was like, that was like, it really,
Oh my goodness. I'm trying to imagine that. That would be the cherry on top for sure. So talk, I've got a few questions for you here that I want to ask you first, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the next project that's on tap for you as a woman. So at the end of each interview, we have just a few minutes left here. At the end of each interview, I ask each guest a series of questions that are organic and off the cuff, kind of lighthearted. So here we go. You have no prep for any of these.
Okay, no,
All
I'm not.
right. So as a creator, as an entrepreneur, what lights you up? What really gets your passion going, your fuel going?
I have to say a challenge. I need to be challenged in order to get excited about something when it comes to, the professional world. If I'm doing something that I'm not passionate about or it doesn't challenge me enough, I lose interest really quick.
It fizzles. Okay. What's an indulgence of yours? Something you love to indulge in?
Chocolate.
Yeah, I was going to say it could just be chocolate.
Wine and chocolate.
Is there any better?
Perfect combination. Yeah.
What's your favorite word? Favorite word?
Resilience.
Least favorite?
Impossible.
Oh, yeah, good one. What do you love about where you live?
The sense of community. We have beautiful summers and falls. Winters, not so much, because I grew up in Miami. So even though I've been here over 20 years, I'm still getting used to it. And hopefully
And
this winter,
here is upstate New York. Yes.
Yes. Miami, upstate New York, very similar. Yeah, very similar. But hopefully this winter, I'm looking forward to traveling more and kind of getting out of it for a little bit. I've never been one to go to the snow for enjoy. I'm not a skier. I don't do any of that. I go towards the sun, not the snow. I try and get away from the snow. So, but the sense of community, and I, to me, it seems like kids stay kids longer here than in the big cities. It's less of a rat race. So yeah, it's been good. It's been good. I go back to big cities sometimes and I'm overwhelmed and I forget about, the traffic and the stress that you have to deal with when it comes to that and the constant rat race. So you kind of can breathe a little easier here.
Speaking of which, because both of our daughters my daughter's there now in Washington, D.C. Your daughter just was there in Washington, D.C. and is now out on the beach, right? But what was Emily's, if she characterized Washington, what did she have to say about
Well, for
it?
her, I got to tell you that kid she was working like a dog. She was covering NFL training camp as a journalist, and she was working bell to bell. But it's a very exciting city. I love DC. Like I absolutely love DC. I hope to one day end up there in some capacity.
Great, wonderful.
We'll leave it at that. But it's a very exciting city, and she's never really lived in a big city. I mean, she went to Vanderbilt, so she lived in Nashville, but DC has a totally different vibe to it. But I mean, she was working bell to bell. She barely had any time to enjoy it or, go to Georgetown or, any of that fun stuff, which I loved when I lived in Bethesda for a little while. And I love it there. I love the vibe there. It's fabulous.
Wonderful. All right. Well, what if we surveyed your friends and family just kind of casually over a glass of wine or whatever the case may be and said, fill in the blank, Rebecca Shiroff is... What would you hope that they would say?
A shining light.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Talk about shining your light in this next new chapter. What is that going to look like for you? And what do you have on the horizon for us? Oh, we'll wait for, we'll wait, long pause. We'll wait for it to render.
Oh, there we go. Is it
there
back?
Okay. It's back. We're back.
So I would say competitive is probably a word that they would use, and kind. I'm always there for friends. I've been in situations where I've been swamped with work or going through a hard time myself. But if a friend says, "Hey, I need you," I drop everything and I'm there.
Wonderful. So what is on the horizon for you? What can we expect to see in your next chapter here?
Well, so aside from that mental health initiative that I was telling you about, I'm also working on another project that has to do with women rediscovering themselves after divorce. And, there's some lessons to be learned in there, and a little bit of advice. And I'm getting information from people in different arenas to kind of help with it. But I'm finding it to be very cathartic. It has helped me again rediscover myself a little bit more, and seeing myself through the view of other people, and
Mm.
what they see in me that I don't see in myself. But I mean, divorce is a very difficult thing. There's a range of emotions. For some people it's devastating. For other people it's a relief, where especially in my situation where things worked out so well that it's you breathe a sigh of relief, like, okay, this is where we both need to be.
Everything's going to be really okay.
Correct.
Everything's going to be,
But
yeah.
yeah, so that's something, it's a project that will be coming out at some point next year, and I work on it every day, and I'm pretty excited about it, and I hope that it will help a lot of women out there who are struggling to redefine themselves after divorce, especially if you've been married for several years, and the range of emotions and the patience that it takes, and just finding out who you are again. Because once you do that, once you find yourself again, I feel it helps you mentally, emotionally, physically. I mean, I have people telling me now that I look way younger than 50. And I think it's because I've like found peace within myself, and I'm
Mm.
genuinely happy.
Yeah, I think cultivating that joy and that your own sense of capability and identity. What if you're sharing this, and we've got 20 somethings on the call, or we'll see this eventually. I mean, what would the 50-year-old Rebecca's kind of final word of advice? What would 50-year-old Rebecca tell 20-year-old Rebecca?
Never lose sense of who you are. Like I said, there should always be your life, my life, and our life. Never lose sense of your life and your time and what your wants and your desires are. Sometimes you can compromise, but don't ever give up who you are completely as a person, because the journey back to finding that person can be very difficult and long. And as long as you hold on to who you really are and what you really want, you'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Thank you ever so much
Oh, it was
for taking an hour out of your day today. I really appreciate it. It's really beautiful to see how you're evolving, and I'm sure you're learning something new, even as much as you know now who you are, and
yes.
what you want. You learn something new every day.
I
And
know.
I learned some new things today. I did.
Yeah, the biggest thing I've learned, I got to tell you, it's so funny when you're 20 something, back when I was that age. Wow, it's a totally different world out there, like the dating world, so different
It
from
is
when I
very
was.
different. It's
It is
very different.
amazing, like between the social media and like it is a completely different world now. I'm like, oh my God, what the heck is this? Yeah, it's really
Warp, like
interesting.
you've gone through a time machine, a warped
Right.
time
It's
machine. Yeah.
crazy. It's crazy. So, thankfully I'm focusing more on me than on that. But I gotta tell you, it's been quite the learning process and experience, and holy
Well,
cow.
and that's part of the journey too, and at some point, as you said, everything and everyone arrives right on time in our
Okay.
life. And sometimes you can't see that until you're
Yep.
on the other side of it. But cultivating that trust within yourself and hopeful expectation
And listening
is,
to your instincts. Your instincts are never wrong.
yeah, your gut,
Yep.
your intuition, particularly as women, right?
That's 100%.
Well,
100%.
Rebecca, I hope to at some point have yet another conversation like this with you. Maybe after some of your two big upcoming initiatives start to really take hold and unfold. It would be wonderful to circle back and check in and see how everything is evolving for you. So, thank you to you for your time and effort and for shining your light bright.
Oh,
And thank you.
you're so amazing. Thank you so much, Angela. You
You're
always
very
just
welcome.
light everything up. Anything you touch.
You're wel-
lights up.
you're
I love
welcome. That's so sweet. Thank you to everyone here. And this will be available online to take a look back at angelamoonin.com, and like and share and follow along. You can find Rebecca Shiroff online certainly as well. And we wish you all the best for living well today. Take
All right.
care. God
Thank you.
bless.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.